Hi! Have you ever watched a show called Avatar: The Last Airbender? Well, if you haven't, well, there's literally no way how you haven't. But if you haven't, it's a cartoon created by Michael Dante DiMartino and Brian Konietzko. Their show had a runtime of 3 years, with its first episode showing on February 21st, 2005, and its final showing being on July 18th, 2008, with a 2-hour movie. And I gotta say, this might be one of the greatest TV shows to ever grace my eyes. The humor, the way it doesn't talk down to its audience, it's definitely one of the best shows of its time. But have you ever wondered what ever happened after the war was fought? Well, back in January of 2012, they released a comic called Avatar: The Last Airbender, The Promise. And that's what we'll be covering today. Let's see how the gang is handling the aftermath of the 100-Year War. Let's dive right into The Promise, Part 1. The issue starts with a reiteration of the opening monologue that plays at the beginning of every episode. The main difference, though, is that he did it! We see that Zuko took over the role as the Fire Lord, and he's working with Aang and the Earth King to bring harmony back to the four nations. First order of business, to get the Fire Nation colonies out of the Earth Kingdom. They call this plan the Harmony Restoration Movement. We then cut to the celebration that we see at the end of the show, and Aang and Katara get a little bit smoochy. It gets cut short, however, when Sokka comes out and gets grossed out by the smooches. Katara and Sokka start fighting until Aang asks what Sokka came out for. He says that they're about to head out and ride on Appa. They wanted to go out and take a flight before the Earth King's bigger celebration. They go on a flight and fireworks start popping off everywhere, and everybody seems to be having a great time. Toph asks Sokka if he wants to know how fireworks were for her, and then she screams in his ear. And Katara's like, bro, chill out, we just saved the world. Aang says Katara's right, and tries to get Zuko to smile, but Zuko changes the subject and asks Aang if he can have a favor. Zuko asks Aang that if he ever sees him turning into his father, he wants Aang to kill him. Jeez, dude. Way to bring down the mood. Zuko says that he knows his family's legacy, and he wants the world to have a safety net, and what better of a safety net is the Avatar? Aang is obviously like, bro, no, what the heck? And Katara nods, and Aang reluctantly accepts. Bro, what the fuck? Katara has zero hesitation. I know they went through some shit, but golly. Cutting to a year later, Zuko wakes up from a nightmare and tells his guards that someone is trying to assassinate him. The guards assure him that he's safe and no one can get to them, just like every other night. Zuko isn't having it though, because there's been 5 attempts on his life already. Like, golly, it's been 1 year, what did he do? Suddenly the guards are taken out, and we see an assassin preparing to attack Zuko. Zuko dodges and then quite literally starts fighting for his life, but eventually gets the upper hand. Zuko asks her why he shouldn't smoke her right now, and she explains that Zuko killing her would only complete the betrayal that he's done to her family. Zuko doesn't understand, and then she explains that her father is the mayor of Yudao, one of the first Fire Nation colonies, and she wants him dead because he's trying to move them out of their home. We then cut to the next day in Yudao, and we see the assassin girl's father excited to see her back home and safe. He asks why his daughter is in chains, and she said that she spoke to somebody about their problem. This is when Zuko and the Fire Bros pull up and snitch on her to her dad. The dad apologizes for his daughter's actions, and Zuko says he should burn the place down, which, that's a little harsh if you ask me. Like, no wonder why these people are trying to kill you already. Koi, the assassin girl, says why bother when the Harmony movement will basically do the same thing. Zuko gets annoyed and says that the movement is for peace, but the dad chimes in and asks whose peace is it for, because these families have been here for generations. Zuko doesn't care though and tells them to go back to the country they came from. The dad said that Zuko's father would never have budged to the Avatar. This causes Zuko to have a flashback to the last time he saw his dad. We see that it's the conversation that they were having at the end of the series, except this time, when he asks where his mom is, he gets a little bit of snark in return. Ozai says that Zuko should have brought some tea and they could have chilled out like him and his traitor's brother. Zuko starts to leave in annoyance, but Ozai says, did you honestly think being the Fire Lord was going to be this easy? Ozai says that Zuko needs him because he's the only one with the wisdom and experience of being the Fire Lord. Cutting back to present day, we see Zuko is shooting a fire strike at the mayor and saying that he is nothing like his father. The mayor says, you're right, because your father wasn't a coward. We then cut to Aang, Sokka, and Katara, and we see them helping Fire Nation colonies move back to the Fire Nation. We learned that some Fire Nation colonies are cool with going back because they haven't been established for as long. We also learned that Zuko is reintroducing classic Fire Nation culture, which Aang is really excited for because he does a classic Fire Nation dance, which they love. What if they were like, that's racist, dude? What the fuck? Look at bro's face. Bro's mad offended. We then see the gangs help the colonials unpack, but they're stopped by some guards. The guards say that they can't come back to the nation because Zuko pulled out of the movement plan. We then cut to the Beifong Metal Bending Academy, and we see that there's a crowd outside of a gate. We see 3 new characters trying to figure out what all the commotion is about when they are suddenly yeeted by our GOAT, Toph. She tells them to get back to practicing, but they explain that they're interested in what's going on outside of Yudao. Toph says that she's interested too, but then suddenly Appa flies overhead. And this is when Toph launches herself onto Appa's saddle. Everybody's extremely excited to see her, and they all start catching up. Then Toph asks where Twinkle Toes is, and she finds him locked in. They tell Toph that Zuko pulled out of the plan, and he's holed up in Udao, and that's where they're going. And Aang is meditating on what he might have to do. We then see Aang talking to Roku in the Avatar state. Aang asks him how can he kill one of his friends? What kind of person would that make him? Roku says that it would make him somebody that keeps his promises. Aang asks Roku if he ever regrets not killing Fire Lord Sozin. And Roku says absolutely. Because he didn't do it, the world burned. Roku says that people in power need to put the needs of the world before their own. And Zuko knew that at one time. Despite Roku's advice, Aang says he still wants to talk to Zuko. And Roku says, alright little homie, but remember what I told you. After this, they land at the crowd and we see the Freedom Fighters. You know Jet's crew? Before he got... Yeah. Smeller B and the crowd are excited to see the Avatar, and they ask him what his plan of attack is. He tells her that he just wants to talk to Zuko, and she's not having that plan. And good luck getting anywhere near where there's troops everywhere. However, that's no problem for the Avatar, because him and Katara fly directly over the gate. Also, they call each other sweetie, and I think it's gross. I think it's a little cringe. And I'm not the only one, because Sokka says that gave him the oogies. When they land, Aang is greeted with guards telling him to leave. When he asks to speak to Zuko, they start attacking him. But Aang is not worried. Look at how he's toying with this first guy. He puts him right in the ground. And then when the other guys start attacking him, Katara's like, dude, you need some help? And he's like, nah, dog, I got this. He's dodging. He's weaving. But then it gets cut short when Katara sees that he catches on fire. And Katara, she decides that she wants to handle business. Aang is really into it. Aang is about to get a sneak attack, however, and this is when Katara goes for the Ice Shard death blow, but then she's suddenly stopped by Zuko. She tells Zuko that he's hurting her, and he says, just like how you hurt my soldiers. This pisses off Aang, however, and he tells him to let her go now. Zuko says he doesn't want to let her go unless she promises that she's not going to hurt anybody else. But Aang ignores all that and blows him away. They start fighting, and Aang says maybe a promise is a promise, and he goes into the Avatar state. Well, this scares the shit out of Zuko and Katara intervenes, saying that Aang needs to calm down. Katara calms him down, and Aang apologizes for almost murking Zuko. Zuko says they both needed to calm down, and Aang says that's what he said in the first place. Which is not true, because he just tells him to let her go. But also, I don't know. I can't stay mad at Zuko, because I love him. He's too good. He's a tortured soul. He can't get any sleep. They're trying to kill him. We then see them walking through Udao, and Zuko tells them that it's one of the oldest Fire Nation colonies. He says with the work of both Fire Nation and Earth Kingdom citizens, this is one of the richest cities in the world. Katara says the labor doesn't seem to be equal, but Zuko says it's best for everyone. Which, okay, dog. Aang says that none of this matters because Zuko is going to cause another war by pulling out of the plan. We then flash back to when Zuko first came to Udao, and he tells his guards to arrest the mayor, but then he's suddenly protected by an Earthbender? We then learn that the Earthbender is the mayor's wife, and she asks Zuko to stay in Udao to see their way of life, which he agrees. And after spending some time there, he now believes that it's unfair for these people to be forcefully removed from their home after being there for generations. But Aang does not like that, and he says that there has to be 4 separate nations so there can be harmony. Katara says maybe Udao can be an exception, but Zuko says that all colonies should be an exception because some of them have been around for centuries. Katara says that they're getting nowhere and they need to consult the Earth King, and they all agree. Meanwhile, on the other side of the gate, we see Sokka trying to calm down the crowd, but then he gets hate crimed. This pisses off Toph and causes her to threaten anyone else that gets a little bit rowdy. Katara and Aang return to the gang and they tell him that they need to speak with the Earth King about their situation. They ask Smellerby if she's able to hold off the crowd, and she says that she can give them 3 days. When the gang leaves, Toph says that she doesn't understand why they even need to talk to the Earth King, because Zuko's just wrong. But Katara says it's a little bit more complicated than that. Aang then thanks Katara for stopping him from killing Zuko, and then they hug. Well, this gives Sokka the oogies. Katara gets mad, she's like, what even are the oogies? Then Toph says that she'll show her, and then she licks her hand. We then cut to the Royal Fire Nation Palace, and see that Zuko reunites with his girlfriend May. You know, the cool knife one? She goes, "Swow." May is upset with Zuko because he vanished for a week without saying anything. After they reconcile, May can tell that Zuko hasn't been sleeping, so she got him a real security team. And that team is the Kyoshi Warriors, and they're there to protect. Zuko tries to get some sleep that night, but he just can't get any rest. He asks them if they hear anything, and they tell him that it's been quiet, and that he should go back to sleep. But Zuko says that he wants to go get some water, and then he leaves on his own. We then see Zuko walk down into the dungeon with some tea, and he asks his father for advice. And that is where part 1 ends. And I gotta say, it's a pretty dope beginning to a storyline. They actually set up a conflict that's actually really believable, which I love. My only gripe is that there's quite literally zero Iroh. Why is he going to his dad for advice instead of his uncle, who has always been there, but pop off, I guess? If you guys want to see part 2 and part 3, let me know down in the comments below. If you want to see me cut my hair in the shape of an arrow like Aang has his tattoos, get this to 50,000 likes, because I don't want to do that shit. And I will see you guys in the next... Oh, hold on. This is my second time asking if I can be Space Ghost. You think it's just going to be in that one Space Ghost video that I will be at the end of this video 100%? No. I would love to be Space Ghost. Please let me be Space Ghost. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the next video. And make sure you tell your family that you love them. Bye-bye now.